What if I told you that one of the richest men on the planet just walked into a camera and dismantled the entire Democrat political strategy, live, on air, in front of millions of people? Not a Republican senator, not a conservative pundit, not a talk radio host, Jeff Bezos. The man Democrats spent years assuming was one of their own. The man they thought was safely in their corner. He sat down for an interview, and what came out of his mouth was so precise, so devastating, so undeniable, that the left has been scrambling to contain the damage ever since. And here's the thing, he wasn't shouting, he wasn't ranting, he was calm, methodical, and that made it 10 times more lethal. If you believe the political class has been lying to working Americans for decades, smash that like button right now. Because what you're about to hear is the proof they never wanted out in the open. This isn't a political spat. This isn't a billionaire throwing a tantrum. This is the moment the mask came off. But what he said next wasn't just controversial. It was a direct attack on the one tactic Democrats have used to win elections for 60 years. Here's what you need to understand first. Jeff Bezos didn't just criticize a policy. He didn't just push back on a tax proposal. He identified the operating system of the modern Democrat Party, and he called it out by name: resentment politics. His response was specifically aimed at a sitting mayor, a politician who had built his entire political career on one single premise: that billionaires like Jeff Bezos are the reason working-class Americans can't afford to live in their own cities. And Bezos looked directly at that argument and said, "That's not a solution, that's a magic trick." Politicians are using the age-old technique of picking a villain and pointing fingers. But the problem is, that doesn't solve anything. He's right. And the terrifying part? This isn't new. Resentment politics goes all the way back to ancient Athens. Politicians have always deflected blame by pointing at an enemy. For the Athenians, the villain was Sparta. For Rome, it was the barbarians at the gates.
But here's what changed, and this is where it gets dark. Historically, the villain was always outside the gates, a foreign enemy, an outside threat, something beyond the borders. Starting in the 1960 seconds, the Democrat Party made a fateful decision. They stopped pointing outward and started pointing inward at their own citizens. Deplorables, losers, racists, white supremacists, bigots, sexists, phobics. That's not political opposition. That's a factory, a machine that manufactures villains out of your neighbors, out of the very people you're supposed to serve, because it's easier than governing, and to a terrifying extent. It worked. The Republican Party has been effectively erased from cities like Baltimore, Detroit, and Memphis, politically extinct, and those cities, those are the proof that Bezos was right. But what happened to those cities once the villain factory took over? That's the part they never want you to see. Let's talk about Baltimore, because Baltimore isn't just a failing city. Baltimore is a case study. It is the living, breathing proof of exactly what Jeff Bezos was describing. There is no city in America that has been more thoroughly, more consistently, more faithfully governed by resentment politics than Baltimore, for decades, without interruption, and the results. The sea.
Italy has lost nearly half its population over the last 30 years. People didn't just move, they fled. Over 400,000 people looked at what Democrat governance delivered, and they left. The ones who stayed. They are not better off. They are not more prosperous. They are not more protected. They are more poor, more trapped, more dependent. And the city around them continues to decay, visibly, undeniably, year after year after year. And what does the political class offer them? More of the same rhetoric, more villains, more finger-pointing, more promises that this time, the resentment will finally trickle down into prosperity. That's the brutal truth about the villain factory. It doesn't lift people up. It creates a permanent underclass, a captive constituency that needs to stay angry, stay resentful, and stay dependent. Because the moment they start solving their own problems, the political machine loses its fuel. Baltimore is not a failure of resources. Baltimore is a failure of ideas. And Bezos wasn't done. Because once he finished exposing the tactic, he turned to the one argument Democrats think is bulletproof: taxes. And he destroyed that too. Tax the rich. It's the rallying cry, the bumper sticker, the crowd pleaser that never gets old. And for decades, Democrats have used it as a shield. Because who's going to argue against making billionaires pay more?
Jeff Bezos, apparently. Here's exactly what he said, and pay close attention, because this is the part that breaks the whole argument apart. I pay billions of dollars in taxes. If people want me to pay more billions, let's have that debate. But don't pretend that's going to solve the problem. You could double the taxes I pay and it's not going to help that teacher in Queens. I promise you, you can't connect those two things, not logically. Read that again. Double his entire tax bill, every single extra dollar. And it still wouldn't fix the problem for one teacher in one borough of New York City. Why? Because the problem was never how much money flows into the government. The problem is what the government does with it once it gets there. And Bezos went even further. He didn't just critique the system in the abstract. He made a proposal so straightforward, so obviously correct, that it nearly broke the entire conversation. He said the bottom half of American income earners, every working-class family, every nurse, every truck driver, every teacher, should pay zero in federal income tax.
Zero. Not because revenue doesn't matter, but because the government's fundamental problem is not that it collects too little. It's that it spends with a reckless, bloated, unaccountable inefficiency that would destroy any private institution within months. But here's where the story takes a dramatic turn. Because Bezos didn't just make a theoretical argument. He reached for a specific example. A number so obscene, so infuriating, so impossible to defend, that it should have ended the conversation entirely. $44,000. That's what the New York City school system spends on every single student, every single year. Let that land for a second. $44,000 per child, per year. That is 30% more than Chicago, Los Angeles, and Boston. It is 3 times more than Miami and Houston.
3 times more, and the outcomes. New York City schools don't get better results. They get comparable results, or worse, than cities spending a fraction of the cost. So, where does the money go? Nobody wants to answer that question. And then Bezos said something that is going to live in political commentary forever. He turned to the camera, and he made the simplest, most devastating comparison imaginable. If we ran Amazon the way New York City runs their school system, your packages would take 6 weeks to arrive. We'd have to charge you a $100 delivery fee, and when the package finally arrived, it'd have the wrong item in it anyway. 6 weeks. $100, wrong item. That is your government. That is the system that resentment politics built and protects and defends every single election cycle, while the children inside it fall further and further behind.
The problem is not money. The problem is not resources. The problem is the corrupt, bloated, inefficient machine of government under Democrat management. A machine that consumes billions and delivers almost nothing, and then blames billionaires for the results. That's not even the most shocking part, because while everyone was focused on the political fallout of this interview, they missed the biggest thing Bezos said. Something that goes far beyond taxes, far beyond schools, far beyond any single election. Something that fundamentally threatens the entire Democrat model of power at a civilizational level. Here's where everything shifts, because at one point in this interview, Bezos said something that most people glossed over, something that sounded almost modest on the surface, but was actually one of the most important political statements of the decade. He said that the value his for-profit companies deliver to society, to civilization, is far greater than anything he could ever contribute through charitable giving.
Think about what that means. Amazon doesn't just deliver packages. Amazon runs the cloud infrastructure on which the CIA, the Pentagon, and dozens of allied governments operate every single day. It is the logistical circulatory system of the American economy, delivering to more households more reliably than the United States Postal Service. Blue Origin isn't just a vanity rocket company, it is competing for dominance in the next frontier of geopolitical power, the lunar economy. The next generation of great power competition will not be fought on land or sea. It will be fought in space. And then there's Elon Musk, who simultaneously controls the satellite internet backbone that literally runs the Ukrainian military's communications, the dominant electric vehicle platform on Earth, and the AI and neural interface frontier.
These are not businessmen in any historic sense of the word. They are not simply wealthy. Wealth is just money. This is infrastructure. This is reach. This is the ability to shape the material conditions of human civilization in ways that no government on Earth can match. And there is a name for this emerging reality: technopolarity. A new configuration of global power in which a small number of technologically sovereign actors, builders of critical digital infrastructure, logistics networks, space access systems, have achieved a level of civilizational reach that is structurally independent of governments, and in many cases surpasses them. This is not science fiction. This is happening right now. And here's the part that should make every Democrat strategist genuinely afraid. You cannot tax your way to the logistical network that fed America through a pandemic. You cannot regulate your way to a reusable rocket that makes humanity a multi-planetary civilization. You cannot redistribute your way to a satellite internet backbone that keeps a nation fighting for its survival. The instinct of the Democrat Party to cast these men as villains is not just bad economics.
It is a civilizational category error, and once you understand what that means, you'll understand why the Democrat Party isn't just losing elections, it's becoming structurally obsolete. Here's the final piece, and this is the one that should hit hardest. The men building the 21st century, Bezos, Musk, and the architects of the new civilizational infrastructure did not get where they are by finding villains. They got there by solving problems, at scale, with discipline, with relentless, unforgiving accountability to results. If a product doesn't work, they fix it. If a rocket explodes, they launch another one. If a system fails, they rebuild it from scratch and make it faster. That is the model. That is what actually works. That is how human societies generate prosperity, security, and power. Now directly contrast that, with a political party that has spent the last 60 years doing the exact opposite. A party whose entire governing philosophy is built on three things: redistribute wealth, punish success, find a new villain every election cycle. That model is not just ineffective. In the world that is rising right now, the technopolar world, it is structurally impossible. It cannot produce the outcomes it promises, not because of bad intentions, but because it is built on a fundamentally false theory of how prosperity is created. And the proof is everywhere. The builders are moving to red states, the investment is flowing to red states. The partnerships between government and technological innovation, the ones that will define American power for the next century, they are forming in red states.
Because one side figured out something the other side refuses to accept. The future belongs to those who build it, not to those who resent it, not to those who tax it, not to those who blame it. And now, for the first time in a long time, someone with the credibility, the platform, and the receipts to prove it has said it out loud. Jeff Bezos just handed the world a mirror. And what it reflected back was 60 years of a political party that chose resentment over results and called it progress. The contrast has never been more visible. The evidence has never been more documented. And it has never been more impossible to explain away. The world is restructuring faster than any election cycle can capture, and the political class is running out of time to catch up. Click the next video right now, because what's coming will show you exactly how this new power structure is reshaping global politics in ways most people still can't see.